Hello and welcome back to the One Take Show podcast. My name is Kaustubh. In this episode, we are in conversation with Mr. Vansh Saluja. Vansh is a program director at Indian Institute of Governance. He is a leadership co-founder and Secretary General at Confederation of Young Leaders. In this episode, he talks about Tier 2 diplomacy and what is the role that young people play in Tier 2 diplomacy. If you like this episode, make sure you like, share and subscribe to the channel. If you have any suggestions or feedbacks, make sure you reach out to me or write them down in the comment section. I would love it either way. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, Vansh. Welcome to the One Take Show. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I've had previously an opportunity to actually compete in a competition which was guided under your supervision. And I think to draw as much inspiration from your experience, from something that you can provide to everyone who is perhaps going to listen to this conversation, is absolutely necessary for my podcast. Thank you so much for taking time off your really busy schedule and sitting down with me.
Thank you so much, Kaustubh, for having me. And it feels very good to reconnect and see you again. And I hope that we have a freewheeling conversation on several issues, but I hope that by the end of the conversation, we can really benefit the listeners of your podcast and also the viewers of your channel.
Absolutely. Perfect. So I think before we get into the substantial part of the conversation, it's essentially required. This is sort of a customary practice from my end to understand the story behind my guests, as in what inspired them to reach the pedestal that they have now and the kind of work that they're doing and the kind of profile that they're maintaining. So could you please let our listeners know a little bit about your background and what all have been your journey portions like or experiences like up to now?
Right. So my journey started very early in the day. Unlike toddlers who are in, say, grade 4th, 5th, who are indulged in a lot of things, I was sort of a very introverted kind of an individual and didn't have a lot of friends. So I made books my best friends, as they say. And right from a very early age, I think back in the day, grade 4th and 5th, I was very clear with what I wanted to do with my life and my career progression. And I think the tipping point was a very inspirational book I read, penned down by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. It was by the name Ignited Minds. And that really sparked the inspiration of doing something for the country when I grow up. And whenever a teacher used to ask me, what do you wish to become when you grow up, I always used to say, I want to become either a politician, I want to do something in the sphere of governance and politics. And obviously, when a very young student says this, that it often attracts very mixed reactions from adults. And I had the same experience from teachers as well. Okay. But just coming back to that little anecdote from my junior school life, post that, my inclination to all these great leaders like Swami Vivekananda, Mahatma Gandhi, Bhagat Singh, it really inspired me to do a lot for the nation, and I molded my career progression towards that sphere itself. So by the time I was in grade 10th, I took up humanities. There was no humanities in school, so I was the only student studying humanities for the first couple of months. So that again was a very, very new experience for me. Sitting in a classroom with the teacher for the first 2 months, and there being no students. Post that, I took up law, and simultaneously I got myself involved with a lot of governments, a lot of political parties, worked with a lot of legislators, and then eventually, after gathering all such experiences during my school years, during my college years, the thought of creating this organization came to our mind. Me and my co-founder, we both were school friends, and we both are, we know each other since 15 years now. Right. Me and Maitryei, and one of our other co-founders as well, who's also an alumni of us. So all three of us came together and really formulated this idea of the Confederation of Young Leaders. So we had multiple organizations running before this. So we had like 7-8 organizations running in tandem, working on various social projects, working in collaboration with various government organizations. And then we thought that why not collate the efforts of all these organizations, all these projects and initiatives under one umbrella organization, and hence the idea of building a confederation. So confederation, as the name suggests, it's an amalgamation of other organizations as well. So now what we do is that we largely work in the field of schools. So there are two verticals largely. One is nation building, and the second is working in the sphere of international diplomacy, the international development sphere. And for that particularly, my personal inclination came to me from the various conferences I attended abroad, various forums where I had the privilege of representing India as a young leader, be it the United Nations, be it forums in various countries like Russia. Then I've been to about 24 countries. I was very, very privileged to be in all these countries and be part of these forums, fellowships, conferences, and that really sparked this idea that we really need to work a lot when it comes to boosting India's image in all these particular countries. And when I particularly came back, and this whole idea of track to diplomacy and why we need to work for why we need to give a lot of importance to track to diplomacy, the idea came from the experiences I had in all these countries, because I realized that India has so much to offer, but unfortunately there's a huge void, there's a huge gap that exists, and we really need to bridge that gap. And who better than the young people to bridge this gap? So that's how the idea of working for track to diplomatic dialogues within the country in partnership with other nations came across. That's how we've been progressing now, and the journey has been very, very fruitful. We've been already acknowledged by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, the Vice President of India, Niti Aayog, and about 17 Chief Ministers of India. And these are for the international dialogues that we have. And then we are working very closely with other government organizations within India itself. For so one of the most ambitious programs that we've launched earlier this year, which was also acknowledged by the Vice President of India, was billion for 5 trillion. So you must be knowing that the Indian government had set this ambition of building India into a $5 trillion economy. This was, of course, pre-pandemic. And our economic goals have largely been disrupted post that. But we launched this campaign of bringing as many people together to work towards this common ambition of building India transforming India into this $5 trillion economy. So that campaign was named Billion for 5 trillion. So billion being that we're bringing a billion plus people together to work for this common ambition. So these are the kind of initiatives that we keep on working on. And I would like to talk more as the conversation proceeds.
No, absolutely. I think this is absolutely fascinating, because I obviously am one of those very sort of a lucky people who's connected to you, with you, especially on platforms like LinkedIn, where I keep getting these updates, and I'm sort of aware of the revolutionary work that you're doing. And I mean, I've had very close friends of mine who've been associated with you, who had an opportunity to actually go to these international conferences that you talk about, and have brought back some of the most fantastic feedbacks that one could receive. But when it comes to the idea that you've just propounded, I do have a couple of follow-up questions, but one thing really caught my eye, and I think it would be really beneficial for any law student per se who would be watching this episode, is that you, after graduating from law school, decided not to go with the traditional job options, which is like litigation or perhaps law firms. You decided to draw your own paths. I mean, I understand your motivation behind it, but wasn't that daunting? A little bit about that before we move into the bigger picture of this conversation.
In fact, before I talk my journey through the law school, I would like to take you my journey before the law school. And the reason why I took up law and why I joined law school. So this is back in 2010-11. And the Anna movement was really on its peak back then. If you would remember, the anti-corruption movement was on its peak. And that is when I learned about Right to Information Act. Largely from this individual named Arvind Kejriwal, who is now the Chief Minister in Delhi now. He wasn't that well known back then, but because of the national campaign on right to information and his association there, and then a lot of other people who were working in this sphere, the CIC, the ex-CIC, Chief Information Commissioner, Mr. Sailesh Gandhi. So all these individuals, I really looked up to them. and I really got fascinated by this tool known as RTI. And by the time I graduated school, I had already filed like 250 RTI applications.
Okay.
And the impact created through those applications was, I mean, that was really phenomenal. And that really brought me close to law. And that,
Right.
that made me realize that law can be a great tool to bring about some tangible change in the lives of people, and
Okay.
at the same time also contribute in the nation's development process as well. So my whole objective of taking up law was, again, to contribute to the nation's development, to contribute and to give back in some way or the other to the community. And it never was taking up a law firm job post graduation or taking up litigation. So my whole sole objective of taking up law itself was to get myself aware of the various laws that are there, legal processes, the way things are adjudicated here in our country. And then with all my learnings and the acquired skills, I can take forward my work in the field of community development, social development and all. So that really was my objective of taking up law. And even during my law school, I hardly did any legal internships per se, in the sense that I didn't have any litigation internships. I didn't have any law firm internships. All my internships were either with legislators, government commissions, government bodies, so that I am in sync with what I really wish to do post my graduation as well.
Right.
So that's how my career progression moved, and I had envisioned everything right from the very beginning, and that's how I planned my career progression.
I think that's wonderful to see someone who's actually had a dream, sort of had a vision, and to actually approach it in a way, because in the recent times, and I say this from a personal experience as well, being a law student, that with the changing times and pandemic, we have become really confused with respect to available opportunities and the kind of opportunities that we actually want to exploit. And perhaps learning from your experience, especially with respect to your law school experience and the kind of opportunities that you've exploited after that, can really give us the kind of perspective. There's another thing that you pointed out in your previous answer. You were talking about the track to diplomacy. And this is something that is rather interesting to me, because I've just come to know about this term. So for the benefit of our viewers, could you tell us a little bit about what exactly is this track to diplomacy that you were talking about?
So thank you, Kaustubh, for putting forth that question, because I think that there are very few people who are actually aware of this very important tool of diplomacy, that is track to diplomacy. Because what we as individuals or citizens know of diplomacy is the high-level visits that are happening between the prime ministers of our country, the meeting of presidents, the high-level visits of foreign secretaries, the visits of external affairs minister. But a lot of things happen behind all the glitz and glamour of this diplomacy. And the track to diplomacy is essentially all that happens beyond track one diplomacy. So there are various tracks of diplomacy, just for the benefit of your viewers and listeners. So the track one diplomacy happens between the high-level officials, functionaries of the government. So president to prime minister, president to president, vice president visiting various countries, the external affairs minister visiting various countries, and then between officials and all. Then track to diplomacy happens between institutions, organizations, and other bodies which really supplement and complement the efforts that are being made under track one diplomacy. So you would have heard a lot about a lot of CEOs accompanying the President of India or the Prime Minister of India and meeting CEOs of that particular country. So all of this is part of that track to dialogue. For example, what we do here in India, earlier this year, we had hosted the Foreign Affairs Minister of Luxembourg when he had visited India. So we had hosted a dialogue with young people in India, hailing from various states, hailing from various backgrounds. And there was an interaction organized between the Foreign Affairs Minister of Luxembourg, who was visiting India, to meet the External Affairs Minister of India. And on the sidelines of that visit, we had this side event in form of an interaction between young achievers from all across India and the Foreign Affairs Minister of Luxembourg, who is also a very important functionary of the European Parliament as well. and the whole his visit was in the context of the upcoming India-EU summit as well. So
Okay.
all of this was happening at the track 1 level, but his visit was also, he also had a track 2 diplomatic engagement during his visit to India as well. So this is just one example of how track 2 diplomacy happens. What essentially is the benefit of track 2 diplomacy is that track 2 diplomacy is something that supplements and complements the efforts that are being made by our leaders at the high level. So if you do not have these track 2 engagements, all of the high level engagements that happen wouldn't have a follow-up mechanism. So whatever agreements that are being entered into, whatever joint statements that are being released, there has to be a follow-up mechanism as well. And of course, there's a follow-up mechanism officially. But beyond that, there are a lot of institutions, there are a lot of bodies. So there are a lot of chambers of commerce, there are a lot of academic institutions, research institutions, think tanks, organizations like ours. So we step in to complement and supplement the vision of the Government of India when it comes to boosting our ties with various nations. So that is what track 2 diplomacy essentially means.
Right. And for what I understand, the way you present it is that somewhere there is a huge role that is being played by the participants in this kind of an engagement, which I'm assuming is to some of the greatest extent is kind of the youth of our country, the ones who are interacting with these conferences or interacting with these. So what kind of a role does the young section of our society play in this track 2 diplomacy that you talk about?
So with regards to the role of young people, so up till hitherto, our existence of like the platform that is provided by CYL and other organizations like Observer Research Foundation and some other organizations who are also working and doing some great work in this sphere. The role of young people in diplomacy was very, very limited. And diplomacy was a reserve for businessmen, CEOs, think tanks, academicians, researchers, etc. And the role of young people was very, very, the space was very shrinked. But what we tried to do is that we tried to put young people on the map of diplomacy, because I personally felt while visiting so many countries and while interacting with young people from so many countries, I felt that there's a huge potential and there's a huge possibility of bringing forth great young Indian talent to the international sphere as well. And we haven't had platforms wherein young people can actually come forward and express themselves in this particular sphere, which is why we tried to create platforms in association with various foreign missions here in India to provide this opportunity for young people to engage with all these nations. And it's a win-win partnership. So for example, we've had partnerships with about 50 foreign missions stationed in India, right from all regions. So be it in Asia, for example, we've had events with South Korea, China, Nepal, Bangladesh. Then if you move westward, we've had it with UAE, Azerbaijan. In Europe, I just mentioned Luxembourg, Czech Republic, Norway, Latin America, Bolivia, Argentina, Chile. I mean, so many countries. We've had engagements with so many countries, and the reason and the whole objective of having these engagements was to create a win-win partnership for both the country and for the young people here in India, and the larger perspective being boosting the bilateral partnership between India and that particular country. So when you had young people coming forth, having interactions with diplomats, having interactions with ambassadors, being part of high-level delegation visits to that country, that particular country, or hosting young people from that particular country to India. So it's these opportunities really open up India to the world, and they open up the foreign nations open up themselves to the young people in India. So it's a win-win partnership wherein young people are getting closer to those countries, and we are taking India closer to all the people there as well. So these interlinkages that were created have really been very, very positive, which is why I think that we've received a very, very positive response from the highest levels of policy circles that are here in India, right from the Prime Minister himself. So I think that this is just a start, and we have a really, really long way to go. But I'm sure that as we proceed, more and more young people would really join in this movement and take forward the legacy, the great legacies of our forefathers, of taking it, of who really gave this vision of making India an important global player. And if we see India as an important global player in the years to come, we really have to leverage the great energies that the young people of this nation have. 65% of the population in India is young. We are the youngest nation in the world. So we have to leverage the positive energy that this huge section of population has. And that is exactly why we thought that it is very important to bring young people in diplomacy.
Right. And I think it is important for me to ask you this question, although I think you have conceptually answered this previously as well, but to reiterate on the point, when we involve the young people in something like track to diplomacy, how does this directly or indirectly connects with the development with, let's say, the soft power that India has to project, or with respect to the involvement of India in the international sphere as you talk about? So what is that linkage or the nexus that we talk about, and how does that work out?
So to answer this question, I'll just give you one small example. So just to give you examples of the kind of engagement that we are having with countries. So we've had like engagements with so many countries, as I just pointed out, but the engagements have really centered around these 4 E's. So the first E stands for exchanges. The second E stands for education. The third E stands for entrepreneurship. And the fourth E stands for exchanges, but with the cultural exchanges. So in all these particular verticals, what we've done is that we've created institutions, we've created platforms for not only young people in India, but having interlinkages with young people from that country as well. So for example, we are establishing youth entrepreneurship forums in partnership with various countries. For example, the India UAE Youth Entrepreneurship Forum is already is in the process. We have the India Israel Youth Entrepreneurship Forum, India China Youth Entrepreneurship Forum, so India Korea Youth Entrepreneurship Forum. So these are platforms wherein young people, young entrepreneurs from India and young entrepreneurs from that particular country can share their knowledge, can share their failures, can share their successes, can share their best practices, and this will really bring young people of both countries closer, which will also lay the foundation of strengthening our bilateral partnerships and bilateral cooperation with that country. So this is just one example in the sphere of entrepreneurship. Similarly, in the sphere of education, we are interlinking universities here in India with universities and institutions in various other countries, again creating these interlinkages wherein young students, young people in India are getting the opportunity of interacting, sharing their knowledge, sharing their best practices with each other through education. And moving beyond that, we've also organized educational exchanges between countries, facilitating these educational exchanges between countries. The next being exchanges in the form of cultural exchanges, or the fourth E, as we say, entertainment. So what we do is that we also organize these, now because of the pandemic and the travel restrictions that we've had, we've organized these cultural evenings wherein we had young amateur artists from various countries perform their music, just perform their cultural performances online over Zoom, and we had a great response to this particular activity. And you would be surprised that there were so many young people in various parts of the world who really follow Bollywood very, very closely. And you had these amateur young singers sing Bollywood songs, and then you had young Indian people sing these Bollywood songs, or just to share their dance moves, etc. Now, this really helps India in the macro perspective to spread the soft power as well. And this soft power is not only through culture, but through other means such as entrepreneurship, such as education. So these are the various benefits of track to diplomacy, I'd say. And all of this is really complementing and supplementing the macro vision that we have as the Indian nation of playing a major role in the global sphere. And just as you would be knowing that India has been forging closer partnerships with so many countries in the world, we've been forging closer partnerships with so many countries in the region itself. So all of this is really a stepping stone and gives the impetus to all the high-level officials to build upon these positive things that are happening at the track 2 level as well.
Right. And I think it's absolutely inspiring in a way, because we as a young person myself, I think to have such an opportunity to interact with somebody who brings me the kind of cultural importance that they have, very niche to their own area, and I get to interact with them in a way to learn from their experiences as well, and perhaps create that kind of influence that will benefit us droplet by droplet, perhaps creating the ripple effect, which will give us the big picture, or the mega plan that you talk about will somehow be realized in this process entirely. But when it comes to the individual participation in this process, if one person like me is to think about such participation, wants to contribute, or perhaps wants to be a part of such process, how do I somehow exploit the opportunities or get in this entire game plan, or participate in a way that can actually benefit me as well, or benefit the entire process?
Right. Thank you, Kaustubh, for that question again, because this is one question that a lot of students usually have, like how can they engage themselves in the whole process. So I'd like to say this very, very openly, that all our events are open for participation by people and young people across the country. Students who age between 16 to 35, and not only students, even young professionals would fall in that particular age bracket. Young professionals, if you're a young entrepreneur, you can be part of various youth entrepreneurship forums that we are setting up. And if you wish to be, and if you're just a beginner and you wish to just experience what it is like to be in a track to diplomatic dialogue, probably you can start with attending one of the dialogues with one of the high official of one of the foreign missions who's taking that particular session, and then you'll just get a hang of what it is in being in a track to diplomatic setup, what are the kind of interactions that happen, and then probably you can step up the game, and then you can start and becoming a more active participant. And that's really how we've really modeled the whole CWAL organization structure as well. Just to brief you about that. So there's no top to bottom organization structure that we follow in CYL. So what we do is that we are just facilitators. Most of the events that we are doing, most of the dialogues that we are doing, most of the initiatives that are being led in the CYL right now, in partnership with various foreign missions, government bodies, etc., are completely led by young people. I hardly have any role in how that particular initiative is running, how that particular project is running, because our end objective is to create leaders for tomorrow. So if you do not give them the flexibility, if you do not give them the essential space of developing their own project, developing their own blueprint, and also giving them the space to execute that particular project, we wouldn't be giving them the essential leadership skills that they require. So what we do is that we usually we have a huge team right now working on the UN 75 initiative. So we've collaborated with the United Nations to contribute to the 75th anniversary celebrations of the United Nations this year. And under that, so the initiative started just a month back, and under this initiative, we've already organized 50 plus events. So if you average it out, it was almost 2 events per day.
Right.
And all of these were led by young people. They were planned by young people in the team. They were planned by, they were the ones who invited the various speakers who are doing all the planning and the execution. And I, for example, or other people in the CY leadership are just background players. We are nowhere to be seen, because ultimately it's their project, it is their initiative, and ultimately they have to be the ones, they are the face of everything. So if any young person wishes to engage themselves in all these things, you're more than welcome to be a part of the team. And when I say be part of the team, it means that you're joining the team as a leader. You're not joining the team as someone who wants tasks for the day, who wants a list of things that they need to do, as usually happens in organizations. Like you have this whole structure that needs to be followed. Like this is the deadline that needs to be followed. This is the timeline that you need to follow. And this happens a lot in internships as well. I'm sure that you are a law student, a lot of law students hearing this as well. So when we talk of the utility of internships as well, so and the way we model internships here at CYL as well, it's a very, very, very fluid and a flexible model. We hardly give deadlines, or we hardly give timelines. and we hardly give tasks. What we do ask is that, what is it that you are particularly interested in? What are the areas that you wish to work in, and how we can support you to achieve that particular goal or achieve that particular project that you wish to do. So by the end of it, the individual who's working is also self-motivated, because he or she is doing something that he or she really wants to do. They already have an inclination towards that, and ultimately, since they are the ones who are just planning, executing, and doing everything, they also learn the essential skills of building teams, managing the back end of the whole process of managing events, calling guests, which also helps them network with a lot of important eminent personalities. So that's how we proceed, because our objective, and all of these events, 99.9% of the events that happen at CUL are completely free of cost. We do not charge anything for any of these events, because this is not something that we're doing as a commercial venture or anything. There are organizations which do charge hefty amounts of fees for similar kind of programs of having interactions with like high level officials and like people from the government, etc. But we don't do that, because our objective is not to create this into a commercial venture. Our objective is to create a movement of young people towards nation building, a movement of young people to propel India to that particular pedestal that we feel that India deserves, taking India to that pedestal where we feel that India deserves to play that major role in the global sphere. So that's the vision that we work with, and this is the vision that I had as the story which I started with when I was young. So when I was young, I had this vision. I cannot lead that vision when I'm much older now.
Absolutely. I think the idea that there is, as you say, hierarchy, there is a fluid sort of an interest-based engagement with respect to how people who are interested in this kind of an engagement would participate is very innovative, number one, and number two, so inviting with respect to the kind of opportunities that you actually provide us, which are unique, which are absolutely wonderful for anyone to exploit. My last question to you with respect to Confederation of Young Leaders is that what exactly does the future look like for you with your organization, and is there any particular game plan that you're following, or is some big event that is coming out that we should look out for?
So right now, as I said, with regards to the engagements that are happening right now, the whole sole focus is on the UN 75 initiatives that is being run in collaboration with the United Nations. There are so many events that are happening almost every day, and I'm sure that a lot of young people would love to be part of such events. So if you are someone who's listening this and who wishes to be a part of the team or part of these events, you're more than welcome to join these events. In addition to that, the Prime Minister of India just delivered his speech to the General Assembly virtually just last month, where he has given a clarion call for other member states in the United Nations to recognize the importance of India and the role India is playing in the United Nations system. In conjunction with that, we are launching a massive digital campaign to make sure that we bring as many voices as possible from India to take these voices to the United Nations and beyond that to other nations through the networks we've already established, in making sure and in really promoting how and why India should play a more active role in the decision-making body or the decision-making table in the United Nations, which of course may come in the form of a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council, although it has its own set of legal challenges that are there. But the whole process of reforming the United Nations and the whole foundation of reforming the United Nations has been laid by that particular speech which the Prime Minister just gave in the United Nations General Assembly. So taking forward that vision, we are launching massive digital campaigns and bringing as many young people as possible on board for that. So if you wish to get involved with that particular campaign, we've already received about 350 registrations in just about 10 days. So that's a massive team that is being built. For the UN 75 team itself, we have a team of 300 people from all across India who are working day and night for organizing these events. And 300, if you see, I mean 300 might seem to be a very big number, but when we talk of the nation, it is not even a fraction of it. And
Right.
when we talk of the huge youth potential that we have, it's hardly a fraction of it. And that is exactly why I say that we have to create a model where we are bringing as many young people as possible to contribute in nation building in various spheres. So, and just a disclaimer, we are not aligned to any government or any political party. So it's a completely bipartisan initiative. We work with all governments, we work with all political parties, we work with all legislators, we work with all ministers, irrespective of which party or which political ideology they follow, because our end objective is very, very different from what a political party or a politically aligned organization might have. Our end objective is to make sure that we as young people contribute our best to this country and the community beyond that as well.
Right. Perfect. I think the future really looks very nice for CIL, especially for all those people who are going to associate themselves with the project, the vision, the ideology that you're propagating, and the kind of cause that you're working for, and the amazing, amazing possibilities that are being generated for everyone to exploit. I think there is absolutely nothing to miss out upon. But the idea that everyone needs to participate and perhaps engage with this kind of a venture that can actually open us up to the various opportunities is extremely important. I think this kind of a conversation was indispensably required on this podcast. Before we wrap this up, do you have any closing remarks for our listeners?
I just wanted to thank you, Kaustubh, for taking this initiative of bringing diverse voices from across the industry. And I've been following your podcasts. I've not listened to all the podcasts, but you happened to interview one of the former ambassadors, who's been to our events frequently, Mr. Vishnu Prakash, if you know. So he posted and he had shared this post, and we were connected on social media because of the similar nature of work that we do. And he had heaped a lot of praises on the great show that you've built. So I am very happy and privileged that you thought me worthy enough to be part of your program. And I just wanted to thank you for taking this initiative of bringing diverse voices from the industry, of various industries and various across the board, and you're actually really helping the young people to know what are the kind of opportunities that they can avail. Because as you rightly said, and as you rightly pointed out, that in these uncertain times, a lot of students who are just graduating and the ones who will be graduating in the years to come, they have a lot of uncertainty right now. They do not know what are the possible opportunities that they have in front of them, whether or not the economy would rebound or not. And at this point of time, it is very important that they have access to right kind of information and the right kind of channels where they can benefit from. So your whole podcast, I think, is a very timely initiative, and I give you, I just extend all my heartiest congratulations to you for putting this up.
Thank you so much. I think the heap of praises and the fact that yes, to have an opportunity, in fact the honor of hosting someone like Ambassador Prakash on the podcast has been the highlight of my endeavors for the past couple of months, to learn from his experience perhaps, and him heaping praise for my endeavors has been filling me with gratitude. I think you would understand that kind of a situation that any student would find himself or herself or themselves to be in with. But I think it's amazing that you've taken out this really outstanding sort of a motivational venture, which is going out and giving people the kind of awareness that we need, so that we can actually think of things that actually matter for our country. I'm truly grateful for your time, truly grateful for this conversation, and I had a wonderful time. I hope you had a good time too.
Thank you so much, Kaustubh. It was wonderful to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Vansh.
Thank you.
Thank you.